Today we're making one of my favorites. We're making sausage with onions and garlic braised in a delicious beer sauce. This dish is cozy, flavor-packed, and it is simple to make. Perfectly brown sausages, a rich beer sauce, and caramelized onions. It is perfect with a piece of crusty sourdough bread to soak up the delicious sauce. This is a cold weather comfort food at its absolute best. For the full ingredient list, check the description box below, but enough talking, let's get cooking. One of the best parts about this recipe is there is not a lot of prep. We just gotta slice some onions and mince up some garlic. So let's start off with the onions. So for the onions, we're gonna put a long slice on the onions. So I'm gonna remove the top and the bottom of the onion. We're gonna split the onion in half. We're gonna take off that outside layer and expose the nice onion meat on the inside. And now we're gonna cut horizontal on the onion. So the onion fibers run this way. So we want these to be nice and tender. So we're gonna cut the fibers going this way on the onion. So that's horizontal. And I'm probably cutting it about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little thicker, probably 1/4 of an inch thick. And I'll try to work my way along the onion, cutting 1/4 inch pieces all the way down. And remember, when we get down to the end, flip the onion around, just a safer cut than flipping it around that way. And now we'll do this for the rest of the onions that we got here. I don't want to cut the onions too thick. I like them to be thin because as they cook and caramelize, as we're cooking the sausages braised in the beer, this is going to allow them to get really nice and soft and delicious and almost melt into the sauce themselves. And I don't want to go overly thin too. Ooh, it's like a challenge to put these in here while I'm fighting off the onion tears. And this container probably could have been a little bit bigger, but I think I'm gonna be able to make it work. All right. Okay, onion tears still going, but we gotta get this show on the road. I don't know how many times I can show how to clean a garlic clove, but I'm just gonna show it again. You pinch it in between your fingers, and then you just roll it in between your hands with a little bit of pressure, and the skin comes right off. I don't like the whole smash it with the knife with the skin still on, because I feel like a lot of times the skin gets mixed up with the garlic clove, and then you got little pieces of the garlic skin inside with the garlic cloves. Here, I never have an issue. And I probably could be a little smarter and work just right over my bowl. Sometimes I don't even have to do the squeeze. I can just put it in between my hands and just give it good pressure. And it comes right off. The initial crack just helps it happen a little faster. So now I'll clip off any of the nasty spots on the garlic and the woody root end. Garlic does grow underground and it's stored for a long time before you get it in the supermarket. So sometimes they have little nasty spots on them. You just cut those right off. The rest of it's just fine. And now I'll take each one of these, smash them, and chop them. Well, I'll smash all of them and then I'll chop them all together. And here I'm using about 6 cloves of garlic. I love garlic and I always put too much garlic. For me, that's just the right amount, but you feel free to tone up or tone down the garlic based upon your flavor preferences and your dietary profile. A lot of times people say that garlic gives them digestion issues. I don't know nothing about that. This stuff makes me feel alive. So, you know, there's no limit to how much garlic we could put in here. But if this looks like too much for you, you feel free to use less. So now that we got our onions sliced and our garlic minced, let's head over to the stove and start browning our sausages. So we're gonna get this pan hot over a medium heat. We don't have to wait for the pan to heat up, but today we're gonna be using some sweet Italian sausage. Recipes like this sometimes are made with like brats. I know that's a common thing, like brats and beer with onions. I feel like any sausage here would work. Italian sausage, especially sweet Italian sausage, is my preferred sausage. So I'm gonna use that for this recipe. And here I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got about 7 links. It's enough that it's gonna fill my cast iron skillet without overcrowding it. So I wanna make sure that I'm gonna use the whole entire skillet that's available. I think like 2 or 3 probably wouldn't be enough, but I want to make sure that it goes inside the pan without overcrowding it. So to the pan, I'm going to add just a touch of oil, not much, but just a little bit, just to kind of get the pan going. And now I'm going to arrange the sausages inside the pan nice and evenly with space in between so that they can brown. And I like adding the sausages before the pan gets hot. I feel like you can get a better, more uniform color on it when the sausages are in the pan cold and then the pan's heating up underneath it. And I'll just kind of take the oil that's inside the pan and just kind of like rub it, make sure that it's getting on like the bottom of the sausage. And now I'm just gonna leave this over this like medium high heat until we start getting some browning on the outside of these sausages. Once the sausages are starting to sing inside this pan, you know that the pan has started to get hot and the browning process has started. So now I'll leave these for a couple minutes on each side. And usually with the sausages, I can brown about 2 to 3 sides on the sausage because the sausage is round. It's got a top and its bottom, but sometimes you can get one other side. And the more color that we get on these, the more flavorful they're going to be. And when meat is browning, I know you'll have the tendency to like try to mess with it and try to move it around the pan. It doesn't need to move. It really just needs to stay there in contact. And you want to disturb it as little as possible. You could take a peek at 1 or 2 of them, but try not to move stuff around the pan. You just want it to like maintain nice solid contact. So these sausages are starting to pick up some nice color on the outside. We're starting to see some blistering of the casing. Once that starts to happen, we'll give each one of these a flip. And what we're looking for is that nice golden, tannish, brownish color. And now we're gonna flip these over and let them sear for another couple minutes on the other side. Maybe we'll try to get the third side, like that bottom side of the sausage. So once I've gotten decent color on both sides, I'm gonna try to do a third side just to add some extra flavor. Here I like to just line up the sausages on their backside along the pan because they're really hard to stand up on that end. Because if we can get some additional color on here, they'll taste even better. The more color, the more flavor. That's for sure. And I don't need to do it all the way across. I can also use the outside of the pan to prop up the sausages and just get some additional extra color before we remove them from the pan. So now you can see, like I'll grab one, you can see we got color on 1 side, 2 side, 3 side. I'm gonna remove these sausages from my skillet. I'm gonna reduce the heat down to a medium, and now we're gonna add our onions. At this point, there's not much oil inside the pan, so I'm gonna add just a little bit more olive oil. And now I'm gonna spread the onions around the pan nice and evenly. At first, I'll throw them around and I'll keep them moving because when onions are raw, they have a tendency to burn. They can burn on the outside before they soften. But once they start to soften, that's when they'll start to brown. So at first, I'll spread them out around the bottom of the pan. I'll let them get hot for not very long. And then I'll just keep tossing them around the pan until they start to soften and they don't feel so stiff. Because I don't want to burn these onions. I want them to soften and then begin to caramelize. And while I'm doing that too, I'm also using my wooden spatula and breaking up any of like the onions that are like stuck together. I want these onions to try to cook pretty evenly, so I'm going to move them around and try to move the ones from the bottom to the top and vice versa. And you can see the onions are already starting to pick up some nice brown color. That's the fond that was left from browning the sausages. And that's why that is such an essential step. Not only does it add color to the outside of the sausages, which is flavor there, it adds flavor to the pan that then the onions and the sauce then start to pick up. So I'm just gonna keep repeating this process for a couple of minutes until these onions are nice and soft. So once the onions have softened a significant amount, you can see how like floppy and wet they are. You can also see how much color that they've taken on. They're no longer white. They're now like this like nice brownish tan, the color of flavor. I'm gonna add my garlic in and just continue to cook this for about a minute while I mix in the garlic and let the garlic get fragrant, but definitely not burn. Make sure that you're cooking over a lower heat. So once I move the garlic around the pan, it'll already start to cook. And garlic releases its flavor very, very fast. So I'm just gonna let this cook for just a minute Once I can begin to smell that garlic, I'm gonna put in 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And now I'm gonna start to work the tomato paste into the onion and garlic mixture. The tomato paste is raw, and you want it to cook for a little bit just like the garlic. And so I'll just keep working the tomato paste around the pan just to pick up any of the flavors, and also to make sure it's nice and spread out all over the onions, and then they all start to like cook together. And again, this process doesn't have to take very long, just a minute or two. So now at this point, I'm gonna add the beer. Here I'm just gonna use a Sam Adams Cold Snap White Ale. This is left over from our Christmas party. Somebody brought it over and they didn't drink it, so I don't drink too much beer, so I'll use whatever. Any ale, lager, pilsner, they'll all kind of work. You may want to stay away from like crazy beers like the peanut butter beers, but I also think porters and the stouts, they get a little too thick and a little too flavorful, but feel free to use whatever your favorite beer is. They all kind of work. So here I'm going to pour in about a cup of beer into there, which is almost one of these. How much is this? A 12-ounce beer. So like almost the whole thing. A cup's about 8 ounces, so you leave a little bit in there. And now I'll work this around the pan and still clean up the bottom a little bit more than the onions and the garlic did. And now you can see that the tomato paste now has like a liquid to incorporate into. And I'm just gonna continue to cook this over the medium heat and let the alcohol and some of the liquid that's inside the beer evaporate, and probably reduce this probably like by half. So while that's happening, we're gonna add a few things. So we're gonna go cheat code and we're gonna put some of this roasted beef bouillon in. This is the low sodium one because I think sometimes the bouillon paste can get a little crazy with the sodium. So reduced sodium still has a lot of salt in it. You can skip this, but I feel like adding this is a gigantic flavor enhancer. So we'll put a spoonful of that in here. We'll also put in a little bit of this here Worcester sauce. We'll also season with a little salt and a little pepper at this point. A lot of this stuff has salt in it, so if you need any more salt than that, I would wait until the end. So now let's mix in that bouillon paste, which is just like concentrated flavor paste, and mix in our seasoning of the salt and pepper. And you can see a really nice sauce is already beginning to develop. And if you're worried about the alcohol in here, I don't really drink a lot, but the alcohol that is in the beer never makes it to the final dish. This thing's gonna simmer for so long that any alcohol that's inside that beer, it's gone. We're just putting that beer in for flavor. So I guess even a non-alcoholic beer would work. And a lot of those are in like ales or pilsners or, you know, those pretty like generic flavored beers. So if you really are worried about the alcohol content, you want to use a non-alcoholic beer, go ahead and do that. I think that totally works here. The alcohol really doesn't provide anything. So now that that beer has reduced a little bit, I'm going to add some stock. This is my chicken bone broth stock. You can use any stock. A beef stock will work here, chicken stock, whatever you got lying around. But the better the stock, the better the flavor we're going to get out of that. And so we're going to add about a cup of the stock as well. And we're gonna put a little sprinkle of some dried oregano from my mom's garden out of the Talenti container, and a couple sprigs of this fresh thyme that we're just gonna pull the leaves off of. If some of the more tender end stems get inside there, I don't care, they'll totally disappear. And this is, you know, rustic home cooking that I absolutely love. This is my favorite style of cooking. So it gives you a little flexibility. So now I'm going to mix those in there so they can start to release their flavors into this wonderful sauce. So once this is hot and up to a simmer and it's reduced a little bit, we're going to add our sausages back in, and I'm going to nestle them right inside the onion and saucy garlic and beer mixture. And I'm spreading them around the pan so they all have nice room to get cooked nice and evenly. Making sure that they're as submerged as they can and they're not just sitting on top of stuff. I want to make sure that they're nice on the bottom. And if there's any juice left behind, we got to get that back in there. We have our no flavors left behind policy that we strictly enforce on this channel. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reduce the heat down to low, and I'm just gonna let this simmer uncovered for about 20 minutes. That's gonna allow the sausages to cook all the way through, because after we brown them, they're not cooked all the way through. That'll be taken care of here. And it's gonna give a lot of time for the sauce to reduce, the onions to continue to cook, and everything that we put in here to release its wonderful flavor into the sauce and let that all develop. So on this lowest heat on this burner, I'm just gonna leave this for about 20 minutes and then this dish is done. I lied before, I said we only gotta prep the onions and the garlic. That's not true. We got one more thing that we gotta cut up. So while this is simmering, we're gonna garnish this with a little parsley. So here I got some nice fresh parsley. I just have the curly kind because that's what they had at the supermarket. And I'm just gonna put a really fine mince on this and chop it up for a garnish. One of the best parts about these like braised style dishes is just sprinkling on just a little bit of fresh parsley on the end, and it's gonna give this a really nice pop of color and make it look like a beautiful finished dish. There's something about sprinkling parsley on top of food that just makes it look so appetizing. So the parsley will add a little bit of mild flavor, but I think the look that it adds, and we eat with our eyes first, so when you see stuff and it's got that little pop of green color on top, it signifies that somebody took their time, took a little love, and put it all into that dish. So we are going to add that extra step. And remember, you're watching this video because you clicked on the thumbnail, because that thumbnail looked pretty. And the reason it looked pretty is because I sprinkled some of this parsley on at the end. Now all of our prep work is done. Let's let that finish simmering. We'll sprinkle on some parsley and let's taste it because it smells absolutely wonderful in here. So this has been simmering for about 20 minutes. You can see that the liquid has been reduced significantly. The sauce is much thicker. Those onions are now super soft. They almost kind of like blend into the sauce. This smells absolutely fantastic. So let's take some of that parsley that we chopped up before. We're gonna give that a nice high sprinkle on top. And you know, just like salt, you wanna let it cascade down and all around. Don't just drop it in a couple spots. And now how amazing does this sausages braised in beer with onions look? Oh my God, this is my idea of winter comfort food. So let's take a look at one of these sausages. So we'll scoop this up with some of these onions. Oh my God, look how soft and delicious these onions look. I can't wait to try this. We'll take a little bit of this sauce, and you can serve, like, look at this sauce. You could serve this on top of like a polenta. You could serve this on top of rice, but something that's gonna soak up this sauce. Here have these nice crusty pieces of sourdough bread that we are going to try this with. So let's cut this sausage. So you can see that the sausage is all fully cooked on the inside. It's simmered very nicely. Sausage, you got to make sure you don't overcook it because it's got a decent amount of fat in it. So if you overcook it, that fat will all render out and then it'll become very, very dry. And dry sausage, I don't know who wants that. So let's take a little bit of this. Let me see if I can figure out how to arrange this on top of the crusty bread. We're not going to go no fork. We're going to use the bread as our utensil. There we go. So onions on top. We got our sausage, this nice crusty sourdough bread. You know, when I make the sourdough, the end pieces are usually the last to go, so they get a little hard, but this is the perfect thing for them. A little bit of toast, and this is the perfect vehicle for this delicious sauce and sausage. But enough talking about it, let's eat this thing. That is so wonderfully delicious. And this is my idea of cozy comfort food, because this is something I would not make, you know, very readily in the summertime, but I will inside the winter time. And this tastes so darn delicious. The sausage is so yummy. The onions are cooked perfectly. Look how delicious and tender they are. The sauce developed over time with all those ingredients, plus the rendering of the sausage, plus what we reclaimed and the onions. Oh man, this is so fantastic. I could eat this all winter long, every single day. And as good as this tastes now, this will taste even better reheated the next day. And this crusty bread was the perfect thing to soak up the sauce on this, you know, because the sauce is probably, next to the sausage, is the best part. I mean, there's only two things. It's only the sausage and the sauce, but I mean, this is so good. You're not going to want to waste that. You know, I'm going to use this bread to clean up this plate. This is my favorite style of cooking, is like braised dishes. And I like making burgers and things like that too. But if I really had to pick one, and like what my favorite style, that would be like grandma winter braising dishes just like this. Onions, garlic, pantry ingredients, protein like the sausage. This is absolutely fantastic. And even the sausage, just by itself, just soaked up in the sauce, and that is just to die for. You could even probably put this on like a nice soft roll and make a sandwich out of it. This is such an easy and just delicious dish that everyone will be asking for you to make it again. I'm gonna have a few more of these sausages and finish up this second piece of bread. If this is your first time at my channel, don't forget to subscribe. Hit like if you like this video. And if it's winter time and you're watching this and you're looking for another cozy meal, check out my white chicken chili. That is a really nice cold weather dish that warms the soul. You'll absolutely love it, and I will see you there. Thank you.